The Reversing Falls in St. John, New Brunswick is truly one of the wonders of nature. The combination of several natural features were necessary for its formation. The narrowing of the St. John River, the shape of the gorge, and an underwater ledge are all part of the creation. However, the most important element is the head-on collision of two mighty bodies of water, the Bay of Fundy and the St. John River. Twice daily they battle for supremacy, and the effects of this battle create two powerful currents. Inflowing on the bottom is salt water. Outflowing at the top is fresh water. There is also horizontal and vertical movement of water in the St. John area, which is unique in the marine field. This explosive meeting takes place in a relatively short stretch of water, which is unusual. The Micmac and Maliseet Indians of this area explained the Reversing Falls in a legend about their great god Glooskap. Glooskap looked after all life in what is now New Brunswick. He was the keeper of the animals and of man. Most of the animals accepted Glooskap's supremacy, but the beaver did not. One day the animals ran to Glooskap exclaiming, "Oh, Glooskap, Glooskap, come quickly! Beaver has built a dam across the mouth of the river and the water is spreading over the land." Glooskap picked up his giant club and in 4 steps was at the mouth of the river. In his rage, he smashed the dam and the remains of the islands which are still there. The force of his blow caused the water to swirl, and the Indians were very upset when Glooskap announced he would leave it that way, so Beaver could not build another dam. They begged Glooskap to change his mind. He thought about it and agreed to calm the waters for 20 minutes every 6 hours, which is why we have slack tide. When Glooskap hit the dam with great force, he broke off the tip of his club, which flew over the land and fell into the water at the mouth of the harbor. There it still sits, and today we call it Partridge Island. The first recorded reference to the phenomenon of the Reversing Falls by a European was made about 1525 by Esteban Gomez, a Portuguese seaman. He had been commissioned by Charles V to explore the eastern coast of North America and to discover, if possible, a northern route to the Orient. Gomez went from the Grand Banks to Florida, systematically exploring rivers and bays along the route. Eventually, he went back to Europe with a shipload of natives and with clear and accurate descriptions of this territory. In his report, he called the River St. John Rio de la Bualta, river that goes to and fro. The present Spandrel Arch Bridge was built in 1915 at a cost of $415,000. It is 565 feet long and wide enough for 2 lanes of traffic. Streetcars used to come down the middle, which was a change for those who rode them to the west side beaches. When the suspension bridge was in use, passengers had to get off at either end, walk across the bridge, and board another streetcar. There were 3 attempts at building a bridge to traverse the falls before William K. Reynolds built a suspension bridge in 1851. For a suspension bridge, towers are built high enough so that a floor may be hung from chains or ropes which are suspended between the towers. This type of bridge will sway and does not feel very secure to anyone using it. Once completed, the builders tested the bridge by distributing 30 wagons with stone weighing more than 2 tons each along the bridge in a double line. When it showed no signs of weakness, 3 double teams loaded with 3 tons apiece were paraded between the 30 wagons. When the bridge held firm, it was pronounced safe for the public. Roads developed slowly in a countryside with good waterways. This was true of New Brunswick and St. John. To build a road, trees had to be chopped down. rocks removed or the ground made level with them by a fill of sand or earth. In the spring, many of them were unusable. They were at their best in the winter, when snow lay in the humps and hollows and the surface had become well packed down by usage. Waterways required no chopping, slashing, or filling and were available for use all year round. In New Brunswick, travel between two communities was usually by boat, but stagecoaches did cover some routes. On the dark and stormy night of March the 1st, 1858, a stagecoach coming from Fredericton galloped onto the suspension bridge, heading for St. John. It had been a long and exhausting trip for all concerned, and everyone was glad they were near the end of their journey. The horses thundered onto the suspension bridge. Then, without warning, they stopped. The driver whipped them and bellowed at them to keep going, but to no avail. Finally, he got down and went to the front in an attempt to drag them across. Suddenly, a flash of lightning illuminated the bridge and revealed a gaping hole where the high wind had torn up a large section of planking on the floor. Had it not been for the horses' sixth sense, the stagecoach and its passengers would have dropped into the falls below. Suspension bridges are built no more. Their structures have been condemned and replaced with a more rigid type of construction. The one over the reversing falls was replaced by a spandrel arch bridge, which is still in use. It is one of the two bridges which connect uptown St. John with West St. John. Until the completion of the Harbor Bridge in 1969, the reversing falls bridge was the only western exit and entrance. The first railway bridge over the reversing falls was built in 1885, longest steel span in Canada at the time. It was replaced by the present railway bridge in 1921. Many years ago, when the first people lived here, they noticed a strange amphibious creature who lived in the falls. It was strange because of its resemblance to both a cormorant and a seal. It would crawl out onto the bank of the river and sit with people. They christened it the ugwug, friendly animal. There were several ugwugs, and each winter they left and went south. Each year, fewer and fewer returned to the St. John River. Finally, only one remained. That ugwug is still there, living in the caverns below the water. If you want to see him, here is how you do it. The time must be in early spring when the tide is high and the moon is full. Go down to the falls and wait on the grass. Soon an ugwug will join you. However, you will have a much better conversation with him if you drink a quart of rum first. The Bay of Fundy has the highest tides in the world. Because of its shape and dimensions, the bay magnifies the tide of water which floods every 12.4 hours into the mouth of the bay from the North Atlantic. 100 billion tons of water cascade through the mouth of the bay from the Atlantic Ocean. This is equal in volume to the 24-hour flow of all the rivers of the world. As the flow proceeds up the bay, the waters are squeezed by the ever-narrowing sides and constant shallowing of the bottom, forcing the tide waters higher up on the shores. In some parts, the tide rises twice a day to the height of a 4-story building. Here in St. John, the tide rises 28½ feet. The Bay of Fundy tides are also affected by the distance of the moon from the earth at this longitude. Twice a month, at the time of the new moon and the full moon, when earth, sun, and moon are aligned, the combined gravitational forces of these bodies are responsible for tides which are higher than normal. The River St. John begins in a wilderness region north of the headwaters of the Penobscot in Maine, not very far from the international boundary of the United States and Canada. From this source to its outlet in the Bay of Fundy, the river wends its way southwards a distance of 450 miles. Grand Bay is the junction of the Kennebecasis River and the St. John River. Just off Boar's Head Point in this area, the water is over 200 feet deep. From there, the river enters the Narrows. This gorge is about 800 feet in width and is flanked by high cliffs rising to a height of 150 feet in some places. This narrowing prevents the river from being inundated by the high tides of the Bay of Fundy. Should this occur, the salt water would penetrate as far as the Grand Lake region. The cliffs under the bridge are of limestone, but above at the upper falls, the rocks where the water tumbles and boils are of hard quartzites. The depth of water at this point varies from 8 to 22 feet, but it plummets in the Gullet to a depth of 126 feet. Falls View Park is situated on a point of land known as Prospect Point. Directly across from here is Union Point. Between these two landmarks are 3 islands: Crow Island, Middle Island, and Goat Island. The spectacular counter-surging of the waters, especially at low tide, is created by the physical shape of the gorge between the reversing falls and the harbor. At high tide, the water from the bay becomes higher than the river level, and slowly at first, the river begins to flow upstream. As the bay tides continue to rise, the reverse flow gradually increases and the rapids begin to form, reaching their peak at high tide. At this point, the tidal waters of the bay are actually 14.5 feet higher than the river. The effect of the reversal is felt upstream as far as Fredericton, more than 80 miles inland. The fast-moving currents, together with the continual mingling of the salt water from the bay and the fresh water from the river, confuse the fish trying to go upstream to spawn or to return to the ocean. Some of the fish found in the waters of the reversing falls are herring, pollock, gaspereau, salmon, trout, and bass. The larger fish force the smaller fish close to the water's surface, providing an abundant feeding ground for the cormorants. Harbor seals feed on the larger fish deeper in the water. Here is a water-level view of the current and rapids at high tide. This custom-built jet boat is certified by the Canadian Coast Guard to traverse the rapids at this time. After high tide, the bay tides begin to fall, and the upstream flow into the river gradually lowers until the height of the bay tide equals the level of the river. This short period of calm is called high slack tide. Dead slack tide, where there is no apparent current movement, lasts for about 10 minutes. The phenomena known as slack tide, however, lasts for about 1 hour. As the bay continues to drop until it reaches low tide, the St. John River empties into the bay between Falls View Park on the right and the pulp mill on the left. The full flow of the river thunders through the narrow gorge. An underwater ledge 36 feet below the surface causes the water in the river to tumble downwards into a pool between 175 to 200 feet in depth below the mill and under the bridge. The water boils in a series of whirlpools caused by the two currents of water. At this point, the river waters are actually 14½ feet higher than the bay tides. The Reversing Falls section of the river's outlet is a little over a half mile in length. On an average, 10 million gallons of water per minute pour through a 330-foot opening stretching from the pulp mill to the other side. The falls then expand in width to some 1,500 feet just above the railway bridge. This stretch of water is sometimes referred to as the Gullet. At the steep walled gorge below the railway and passenger bridges, the average width is 450 feet. Then it narrows back to a mere 300 feet at Split Rock, where rock ledges protrude from the gorge walls. The rapids around the islands provide a unique challenge for groups of experienced kayakers. Here is another water level view of the rapids 1 hour after peak low tide. It is too dangerous for ordinary boats to try to traverse the rapids created by the reversal of the tides. When we reach the rapids, notice the 10-foot high wall of water at the corner nearest the pulp mill. This illustrates the height of the water coming down from the river into the bay. It tumbles through at speeds of 25 to 30 knots.
good with anything else.
No, not a canoe.
No, it's not. You ready?
Okay.
Hold on.
As the bay tides begin to rise, they slow the course of the river and finally stop the river's flow completely, resulting in another period of calm called low slack tide. This is another time when boats are able to navigate through the falls towards the harbor or to begin a journey up the St. John River. When Esteban Gomez sailed up the Bay of Fundy and into our harbor, it was about 3 times the size it is now. Forests came down to the water's edge and rocky cliffs rimmed its shores. To accommodate the human population, alterations to the terrain are a common factor. But through everything, fires, flood, and storms of all kinds, the reversing falls has remained a constant. As it did in the time of Glooskap, the waters of the St. John River rushed down to meet the giant tides of the Bay of Fundy, and the twice-daily battle goes on. However, changes are beginning to take place. Landfill is encroaching on the river's edge, but hopefully the tumultuous waters of the falls will continue to fascinate people for a very long time.